Want to drive faster? Listen in as Kinch Rendell, an SCCA National Trophy winner and multi-time Pro Solo champion himself, interviews the best autocrossers in the land. He talks fast and drives even faster. And now here's your host, Kinch Rendell.
I had the pleasure of interviewing TeddieAlexandrova, and it's interesting, her experience. She's driven lots of cars, as well as the insight she has from coaching and teaching at the SCCA Starting Line School, as well as Track Night in America. So she drives lots of different cars, has helped lots of people, and also things that stand out to me is her knowledge on Miatas, just the experiences she's had, and her insights and the way she words things. I took notes of quite a few of the things she had. Something that stood out to me was when she said the intent. So not just practicing or going out there and driving at an event, but having a purpose and an intent for what you're doing. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Teddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kinch, for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
When did you get started with autocrossing?
I did my first event, I believe, in 2007. And unlike most people that have been on your show that, showed up in whatever car they had, I showed up in my new E46 M3 thinking like, I have like the coolest car here, one of the fastest cars, and I'm going to do so great. But it was really the most humbling experience. I had just found out at that point I was doing track days, and somebody at the track day told me about autocross, and I figured, well, what the heck, I'll check it out. So I showed up to a local event, and, I thought it would be I didn't know anything about classes. I didn't know anything about rules and cones and walking course. I had absolutely no clue. And, I was DNFing all day long. I think I improved like 24 seconds between my, first and last runs. And I was totally not a natural. I had no concept of line, no concept of where the course went or which side of the cones to go on. So I was kind of underwhelmed. I didn't do too many events until the following year, until 2008, when I bought a Miata to turn into a track car. And then a buddy of mine who was doing a lot of track days, he told me, well, let's, help me come set up courses for autocross, because we ran at Homestead Miami Speedway at the time. And so I showed up because I always went off course. I didn't know where the course went. So he was hoping, hey, maybe by setting up the course, you'll have an easier time remembering where the course goes. So I did that, and like my first event down there, I met Darren DeSimo, or kind of started talking to Darren DeSimo, who also had a 99 Miata, and kind of like made friends with the fast people, like really, really early on. And that year in 2008, I still wasn't doing great. I think toward the end of the year, I kind of was getting a little frustrated, and even though I'd made friends and had a great time at the events, I just figured, this isn't for me. Like, I'm just not getting any better. It was probably like bottom 10 packs every event. And that's when I kind of decided maybe I should try something different. But somebody told me about an EVO school that was going on in Fort Myers, Florida. So I decided, well, maybe it's worth a try. If nothing else, I'll have fun for a couple of days. And it was being taught by Gene Kinzer and Greg Hahn, and I knew Greg was just a newly crowned national champion, and I heard a lot about Gene, because she's local in Florida. So, and I was just really curious. And at the school, Greg Hahn told me, oh, you have a 6-speed Miata, you're going to have to shift a lot to third. And I'm like, well, I'm too slow. I never shift to third. And lo and behold, the very next event, like I'm shifting to third gear, and, I started getting better, like, pretty much like overnight. Like the light bulb went off, and I was spinning out, I was screeching my tires, but I started getting better. Like in 2009, like a year after I'd started autocrossing, Darren DeSimo dragged me to my first national event, which was the Dixie National Tour, and it kind of went downhill from there.
That's impressive that you were able to improve right after a school. I found for myself after an advanced school that I tried to change so much that I wasn't able to improve for quite a while, because I was trying to change 8 things instead of focusing on 1 or 2 things to change. Why do you think you were maybe not meeting your expectations to begin with?
I don't don't know. It was probably a combination of me thinking, well, it wasn't half bad at the track because, I got checked out to, go solo probably my second or third track event. So I had a pretty good concept of what I was doing there.
So you actually spent time on the track before ever autocrossing?
I'd only done a few track days and not really a whole lot. And I never did that many again after I started autocrossing because there was just never enough time. I was always autocrossing. Not a whole lot, just a few track weekends here and there. But I thought it was kind of a combination between, how fast I advanced. Maybe I'd done like a handful of track weekends before then, and the fact that I had a pretty powerful car. But they kind of gave me the confidence, so maybe, I could do well at this, but no.
And you mentioned having the M3 being your first autocross car. I actually think it's harder for somebody starting out in autocross when they have a more powerful car versus something that's slower. It seems like the power gets people in trouble because they use the gas pedal, but they don't use the brake pedal as much as they should.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I think a slower car is less intimidating because it's much easier to get to the limit. And when you go over, it doesn't have those consequences that it has in a car with a lot of power. And really, I think it lets you focus on, more on smaller details that actually have to do with line and driving, and you're not thinking so much about taming the car.
So when you first started, were you too aggressive or not aggressive enough?
Oh, I was absolutely not aggressive enough. I'm the worst underdriver ever, and it's something that, I've had to spend a lot of time overcoming. And when I was aggressive, it was totally in the wrong place. I would brake and turn at the same time, or like brake super late, like dive bomb into corners. Like, yeah. At some point, I gave me the number 360 because I was spinning out every event, and it was only because I was braking and turning at the same time and thought that the car could handle it. But no, some Miata gets light in the back, and it's not that hard for it to come around, even without a lot of power.
I've heard that Miatas do not like to trail brake. What are your thoughts on setting them up? Can you dial that out, or is that kind of a rule we can go with for Miatas?
It's very setup dependent, and I've driven a good bit of Miatas at different schools, and they're different. Some of them are really benign, some are more, twitchier. Some you can trail brake, some you can't. But generally, I don't think they love being trail braked, especially the NC. It's something I noticed with the NC, because we had an SDR NC for a little bit. I didn't really like to be trail braked, but it turned in really well, so it wasn't that crucial to trail brake that car. It turned in really well, but then mid-corner would get a little pushy. But I think it's entirely setup dependent. You can set up the car to be pretty well. I don't think it's really that hard to set up a Miata well to where it's really well balanced.
That reminds me of riding in a Miata at a school through a triangle drill. And for most cars, you would accelerate, brake, turn. With the Miatas, I started to think maybe you don't even have to brake. So maybe this whole trail braking isn't all that necessary.
Yeah, I think this is something that applies literally to any car you autocross. You always want to try lifting instead of braking. Try lifting early, try a longer lift, but especially the faster the element you're coming up on, try lifting. See if it works. What's the worst that can happen, But do it early. That's the point. And people have trouble backing up their inputs like this. Like, you really have to train yourself to do everything earlier if you're going to be just lifting. But it is amazing how much speed you can carry in those cars if you just do everything early. And especially a stock Miata or a street class now Miata, it's going to be very sloppy. So you have to, guide it and initiate your inputs early. And I always have trouble going from an SD car back to a stock car because I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do everything earlier.
With those stock cars, you're waiting for them to have the body roll to probably set before it can even turn. So do you credit your improvements after the Evo school from all that seat time you got?
I think it's not just seat time, because I was getting plenty of seat time that season, but it's seat time with purpose and with intent and knowing exactly what you want to work on and practicing the right things. Because if you practice the wrong things or really have no idea what you're doing out there, seat time is no good. Like, you still have to practice the right things. And it kind of, I think I just learned, it was mainly just muscle memory and just feeling how much grip I had available in like driving to the limit of that grip more. And but it was mainly an issue of looking ahead and just connecting the dots.
I really like what you just said about going out there with an intent and purpose each time you're driving. It could be even each time you're at a practice session of what you're really working on. Did you find setting up the course helped you memorize it so you could look ahead and know where you're going?
Not necessarily. At one of our venues I did, but in Fort Myers they always set them up, and they're really, really long runway courses, and they're very samey because it's just offsets on the way out, and then you turn around and you come back, and it's just offsets and slaloms on the way back. So it's almost impossible to memorize the course, like, because it's very repetitive. So there's only little differences here and there. So you really have to be looking ahead. I mean, the only difference is, though, you don't have to be looking out your side window because, everything's right in front of you. But you still have to look ahead, or you would totally miss a gate somewhere.
That lot reminds me of Coors Field. We always had offsets or slaloms, back and forth, left and right, a little turnaround, left and right, all the way back. So I definitely think I learned how to do offsets and slaloms, and like one turnaround where I knew I could look across, but it was only like the one turnaround, not much more than that.
Yes, and this is why I had such a hard time with national courses, once I started doing national events, because I didn't know there was such a thing as turns and sweepers and a sweeper into a sweeper. The first time I ever saw that was in Lincoln, and I was mind blown. I was way overwhelmed because I'd never seen anything like that, and at that point I'd done a couple of pro solos. I did the Dixon National Tour, which is the same thing. It's like an up and back runway, and it was my first nationals was the first year in Lincoln, and I just show up there, and I'm like, I have no idea how to drive this because I all I had ever seen was slaloms. So I thought, okay, autocross is just slaloms, but it's not. And you're right. And then I've been learning just the past couple of years how to drive sweepers.
Do you think track time would help you learn how to drive sweepers better in autocross land? That's been recommended, and I keep thinking I'm going to get out there for more practice just for sweepers.
I think so, for sure, because it would help you in terms of looking for your exit and setting your entry speed and just seeing what you can get away with. It's different in some ways because, and at the track, generally you carry wider lines, than you do in autocross. But, you can definitely get sweeper practice just in, setting a constant arc and, not having to correct 3 times mid-sweeper and just looking for your exit. And yeah, I think it can be helpful. I think autocross definitely helps with, driving on track much more than the other way around. But I think there is some crossover between the two.
Some of the people listening should chime in with their thoughts on sweepers on tracks corresponding back to autocross. I could see with the bigger turns getting good practice at maybe feeling that weight transfer, maybe braking earlier since it is a higher speed on most of those turns compared to autocross sweepers, or at least maybe equal to in some cases. That'd be quite interesting. But part of me thinking about braking early once again, it conflicts with the book I was reading about on the track, the top racers. They said the brake zone is where it's won or lost. So braking really hard and late, whoever did that the best, even if they overbroke just a smidgen, that would not be made up on the next, let's say, straight. So that's, I'm guessing since they looked at the data and they showed the data in that book that's true. And that's probably one reason why I'm thinking, no, I got to brake late. Although I realize it's got to be probably quite hard to brake late, I guess, consistently. And in autocross, you got so many chances to screw it up by trying to brake so late that I don't recommend everybody try that all the time, but it might be worth trying. I've always liked cars with anti-lock brakes for that reason, to be able to brake late and hard.
Well, generally, my idea is if you're going to brake late and hard, I would only do that. I mean, the slower the corner, the later and harder I'm going to brake. The faster the corner, the earlier and less I'm going to brake. So the idea is to make it seamless. So If it's just a really, really slow corner where there's really nothing to be gained by trying to go fast into it, I try to maximize my acceleration going into it, and and then just carry a tight line through the corner. But and this is very obviously, I'm generalizing here. It really depends. It depends on what's coming up after the corner. But the faster the corner, the more seamless I try to make it be. And my goal is always, if somebody's watching from the outside, they don't want to see the nosedive. Or if somebody's like riding along with me, if it's a fast corner coming up, I don't want them to even feel when I'm braking. Just make it so seamless. And if you do everything early, you'd be surprised how much speed you're able to carry as long as you hit your apex. And I know you've also talked a lot about getting on the gas and when you get on the gas. And I think that's going to be highly dependent on how much speed you carry into the corner. Because the more speed you carry into the corner, the later you'll be able to get on the gas.
I really like what you just said there about when you would brake harder and later being for these slower turns, which reminds me, I probably developed my habit because I drove the Integra for so many years and I would downshift to first gear decently often. And thus, I'd probably, if anything, overbrake to use first gear to think I'm going faster. And then you really hit on the seamless is great, how you want it to be a seamless transition. That has to deal with how much weight I gather you are transferring back and forth to make it seamless. You're going to smoothly do that. Another big key is outside of the small short turns or the slower turns, for those faster turns, those are the times you're going to key in to brake a little sooner because it's more of a finesse brake, I gather, because you only need to take off so much speed. And like you're saying, you don't have to take off near as much if you're smooth and thus seamlessly transferring that weight while slowing down. That's nice. I really like the way you said that.
Yeah, and I think going back to the left foot braking, I'm not a left foot braker. I know you would probably ask me at some point, but I think from what I've observed on course, left foot breakers out there, and there's a lot of fast people who are left foot breakers. I think Mark Daddio is, and he drives rear-wheel drive cars. And but I think, I know it's really popular with front-wheel drive cars. But personally, I think that it can hurt you. As long as you're not over braking, that's fine. You can left foot brake, and I think there's going to be cars in which it's beneficial to kind of just, set the nose real quick. But you don't want to rely on it as a crutch. Like I've seen a lot of left foot breakers tap in slaloms, and it just breaks my heart. I'm like, no, don't do that. No tapping in the slalom. Like in the middle of the slalom, or, make yourself, lift early or brake early, set the nose, and like attack the first cone. Don't, you shouldn't be using brakes in the slalom. And I guess it's something that comes from, just teaching that, day in and day out at the schools. Like you want to accelerate out of a slalom. You don't want any brakes in the slalom.
I am guilty as charged. Now, not every slalom, but I'm predisposed to, if possible, fly into a slalom. It's like living on the wild side or something. Not recommended, everybody. Don't do it. If it works out, I'll tell you if I'm still doing that in the future. I guess the only times I know that I'd say it's okay is if it's a big, huge opening to get into the first couple cones. That's right. I'm going to claim I've seen John Ames do it, so therefore it must be A-okay. Well, only because I didn't see other people beat him at the same event. So, yeah, I do agree that if you're teaching somebody, and you, especially if you have a nice slalom setup, it's not huge and wide open, you don't want them going in there, especially new, diving in, trying to brake, get the car under control, and then get back to speed. Because, once again, that's not very seamless. So, yeah, the left foot braking, I'm hoping with the video game playing that I'm not doing very much of, but I just got a seat. Like, now it's got to be official. I may actually make the Wednesday night sessions. That it seems like that's a place of all things where I'm only going to try to right foot brake to get in that habit. Because I just feel like Andy Hollis was the first person I really heard who said, I left foot brake, but he also has that time to lift in between. I think that lift is part of that seamless transition that makes it smooth and probably adds a little specialness maybe to it of the lift to get some of the weight to start transitioning.
Yeah, and this is interesting because of all places I left foot brake when I play video games. And also I left foot brake in I left foot brake on the street when I have like an automatic rental and it's really boring to drive and it gives my left foot something to do. But I right foot brake autocrossing and I left foot brake, yeah, playing video games because I don't know, it's just easier, it's more intuitive, but also.
And it might even be good though for the muscle memory not to get confused because for the video game setup I have a pretty cheap pedal set. There's not much feedback on that brake pedal at all.
Exactly.
So going with the right foot, if you're used to it all the time, might not be that good. I also left foot brake in automatic cars. But that's easy because we're not autocrossing, whereas when I finally have planted that left foot and braced myself, there might be a decent benefit just in that because usually my seat isn't holding me in. That there's probably even a benefit to there for some of us who aren't latched in.
I mean, you can either do it through video games or pick an event, pick a practice event. Well, it's come springtime for you guys, but pick a practice event and just do that. Spend all day, just plant your foot on the left foot on the dead pedal and don't move it, and just have that be the goal of your event. And just be prepared that it may suck, you may be slow, but that's what you're practicing.
Yeah, so we get lucky here. Now there's a little snow outside, only in the shade. But we raced last week, and it was probably 27, 28 degrees when we started setting up cones, and I didn't have any gloves. But so luckily, if the weather works out, it'll be 50 or 60 degrees most days. But what I realized after doing this is I drove a front-wheel drive FSP Scirocco, which is won nationals. Kevin Wenzel set it up, built it years ago. My safety valve in front-wheel drive cars is left foot braking. But I realize I don't really need that safety valve in so many other cars, and maybe not even those. But if they're tail happy, that's when that foot's dragging, or as you said, people start tapping in the slaloms or tapping certain places. I swear it's just a safety valve, which might be a slow one, but it definitely seems to be the safety valve that people reach for.
And this is very interesting that you say that because I would say our STO cars have been pretty tail happy on occasion. And no, never. I mean, if they're tail happy on power, like it depends on where they're tail happy, but if they're tail happy on power, which I'm sure your Civic is not.
Exactly.
If they're transitionally tail happy, like off throttle, I mean, either way, I think my arc seat was more transitionally tail happy, and I mean, it's manageable. You just kind of have to learn to anticipate it more and just not really rely on your left foot.
Yep.
Because I mean, truthfully, it can slow you down if you overslow. Whether it's in slaloms or wherever, if you overuse your left foot for braking, it can slow you down.
Yeah, compared to the slight benefit we all think we're getting by transitioning to the brake faster. So tell us about this STU car you just mentioned.
Well, which one?
How many do you have right now?
Well, right now, like, we have the silver 350Z that we bought from Brian Peters a couple years ago, which was an STU car. At the time, he had just won nationals in it in 2014, and then right before nationals, this past nationals, a week before nationals, we decided we were going to build another 350Z for STU, which is the newer HR model, which has a lot more gearing and a lot more power. So we basically decided to transfer our setup onto this new car that we had just bought. And get it ready for nationals with like a week to go, which was one of the craziest things I've done in my life, and I don't recommend it, but it worked. And then I have my E46, which is kind of an STU-ish car, but it doesn't really have wheels and tires, but it's the car I started autocrossing in. So.
Oh, you still have it? Nice.
Still have it. Yeah, it's my baby.
Oh, I luckily I sold a Sprint Turbo recently that was never raced. But usually I regret selling pretty much every car I've ever raced. I want to keep them all. So
I don't regret selling any of my race cars, but that car is really special to me, and it's my dream car. It was my dream car, and I bought it right out of school, and I told myself, okay, I can only justify spending this amount of crazy money on a car if I'm just going to keep it forever. So
maybe okay, I'm going to try to use that. I still have never bought a new car. Oh, that's one thing I see everybody posting on Facebook, and I've not done it about how many cars have you owned and all that. I'm like, I don't want to think through all this, but I did think, I'm like, I was close to getting a Subaru WRX. I ended up getting, of all things, an SUV Lexus that I hope will maybe replace the big truck. But it's so crazy how I was like, I can do it. I can buy a new car. No, I can't buy a new car yet. So I like your idea of if I told myself I'm going to keep it forever like it's a dream car, then maybe I can pull the trigger there.
I feel like everybody has a car in their life that is really special to them, and it's like it's the one. It's like the big love of their life. And to me, that's always been the 46 M3, and I also love GT3 Porsches. So there's that.
Hey, no kidding. That's where I because it's Salil, I'm dreaming. I'm like, you might should get one of these someday. Maybe someday.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not so much. I don't know if I'll ever own one, but it's just a car that I really admire and love the way it looks and the way it performs. Actually, I got to ride in an RS, in a new RS at Laguna Seca a couple months ago, and it was just mind blowing.
Have you driven a GT3?
I haven't driven them. I've only ridden in them. Haven't driven one.
Somebody get her in there so I can ask her all the questions. That's it.
Yeah, I love hearing your feedback on the GT3. When you talk to different guests on your show, and I just love hearing people's thoughts on them, because to me they're a really intriguing car. I mean, I've known several people that have had them, and we're lucky to have plenty of them here in the Bay Area. But yeah, it's really interesting. How you always talk about the car, how it pushes on power, but then it's got all this power that your Civic doesn't have. So it's like 100% different. Couldn't be any more different.
Yeah, I say that, and then Shelly and Sam, when they come on the show, I talk to them at Spring Nationals, and they totally describe a Civic. They're like, oh, it's all about lifting, and the car rotates, and then you add gas, and it goes straight again. I'm like, that's a Civic. As soon as you start rotating, you just add gas when you want it to go straight again. So what I've heard talking to Scott Frazier and all these people offline is the setup is so key for those cars. So that's where everybody should bug Ken Monanishi, because he hasn't yet come on the podcast. But he's been driving one well for years, even the less powerful one. So they are very intriguing, but the go fast factor is amazing. Of course, this comes from me driving Civics and slower cars. You mentioned the 350Z. Did you say you transitioned from one 350Z to another, or to a 370Z?
No, to a 350. The 370 is not yet legal for STU, and I'm sure we'll have one that, whenever it gets moved to STU.
So tell us the difference. So you said more power. What year model did you go to?
Our original one was a D, which is an 03 to 05, and then the HR models were actually 07, 08. So 03 to 06 are the Ds, and 07, 08s had the HR motor, which it's only about 30 railroad horsepower more and 8 miles an hour more in second gear. So that's pretty huge.
Yeah, the 8 miles, depending on what the top of second was, can be really huge.
On the Bridgestones, about 59, 60 in the D, which is really not enough in an STO car. So we were all over third gear, always shifting to third, whereas everybody else was in second. The Evos now and the 18s can go to 65 in second, and the Corvettes were obviously really toe geared, and the HRZs are pretty toe geared. So we were kind of the short geared one and down on power. So we figured, well, let's do this. Let's try building this. I mean, we've kind of thought about transitioning to an HR car, kind of moving our setup to a different car. And I saw this really, really pretty blue 350Z at the Crow's Landing tour this year, and asked the owner, if it was for sale. And he was like, well, anything can be for sale, so maybe the end of the season. And he lived in Canada. And so I kind of didn't think much about it, but then I asked him if I could take it to the scale, so I really was interested in finding out how much heavier it was than a D, and it didn't turn out to be that much heavier than our STU car. It was probably like 120 pounds or so, but that was a stock car versus our STU car. So, in STU trim, it's, the difference is a lot less, probably within 25, 30 pounds between the two cars. So it was totally really, really worth, it wasn't really much of a weight penalty for how much extra power we got. And so we kept talking with the owner and kind of convinced him to sell us his car. And we drove it back from Packwood. We met him at Packwood because we went there for the tour, and drove it home, and kind of kept it under wraps for no really particular reason, but we moved all of our parts in a week right before Nationals and drove the car to Lincoln. And the car had not done a single run in XD trim, and just kind of hoped it would work. So it made its first runs at the test and tune course. And we tweaked the setup, we tweaked the rake a little bit there, and and that was it.
So take me through this. Why did you tweak the rake of the car? What did you feel? What made you think to do that?
Well, at first it was a little loose. It was a little too loose. We could never, even though it theoretically has a very similar setup to our old STU car, it never handled quite the same. And we've only done one event in it since National, so we actually haven't had much time to really dial it in. But it was a little loose, a little too loose everywhere. So we lowered the back a couple of turns to see what it does, maybe 2 or 3 turns, I don't remember exactly. And then it started getting a little pushy. So then we raised it back another turn and kind of in hopes of finding a happy place, somewhere where it would be happy. But I find that rake actually playing with ride height is a very powerful tool, and especially on my Mazdas. Every time I've changed rake, these cars are super sensitive to ride height changes, and you can actually change a lot for free, and and it doesn't really take a long time to do. So.
Yeah, no kidding. So is that basically moving the static weight around from the front to back? So if it was 50-50, you would then move more to the back, so the back wouldn't be loose?
Yeah, and I guess the idea is that when you lower the back, the car will be more stable on power because there's more weight in the back. Whereas if you raise the back, you would achieve the opposite effect.
Interesting. For some reason, I had that exactly backwards. I thought that whatever was higher was going to get more weight, which I don't know why I convinced myself that was true, but that's why I wanted to dig into this, just to make sure that what I was thinking was exactly backwards for everybody else listening that wants to learn about setup. So, and I like that you said the Mazda. So were these RX-8s? What all did you set up and drive?
I had a 99. My first Mazda was my 99 10th anniversary edition, which was a stock car, or whatever tires I was driving, not really Hoosiers. But then I was co-driving a 99 Sport, which was Darren DeSimo's old car, which was the car I drove at my first Nationals. And then in 2009, after Nationals, I got a C-Stock RX-8. And then later, I started building this RX-8 for STX. And that car got totaled. Somebody hit me on the way to an event. And I kind of salvaged whatever parts I could. Bought another RX-8, built that for STX. Ran that for a few years. And then we got the Z. So it's been... before the Z, we got another MX-5. We got an MX-5, which was an NC STR car. I know, I'm just all over the place with cars.
So get more into the Miata. So I was threatening Salil that we're going to buy a Miata and race it this next year because I keep hearing they're so good to learn in. And if that's true, why is that true? What would somebody get out of having a Miata? Which classes would you recommend they start in? Give us some of your background with that and thoughts.
I truly would recommend just getting a stock Miata. If you're, before even building it, before getting into anything like that, just get a regular East Street Miata and just drive. Just get a Racing Beat sway bar in it, some conies, and just go driving. And the reason being is, like I touched upon earlier, is that it's easy to get to the limit in that car. And it's okay if you go over, but it's a lot easier to spend more time at the limit because racing really is, I love how Andy Hollis calls it, it's a mistake management. And what you want to do is basically maximize your time spent at the limit. And it's easier to do in a Miata than in a Corvette, and much easier than in a 350Z even, because they're really benign cars and they're naturally pretty well balanced. And similar car to the Miata is the RX-8. It's really an oversized Miata with ABS, but it drives just the same, and it kind of has. It's actually quite similar, I would say, in what it's required as far as driving style. And they're pretty fun to drive, have a really decent diff. If you're going to get a Miata, I would say start with if you can find a 99 Sport or just any 99 with a Torsen limited slip, even a leather package or whatever you can find, and throw some conies in it and a Racing Beat bar, and then you're done.
So that's and what is that? What are you guessing price range those even run for somebody?
You could probably buy buy a 99 Miata for $5,000 in good shape.
Reminds me of the Toyota Spider. For whatever reason, I saw those are pretty cheap, and somebody's like, "Oh, they're so much fun." But it seems like the Miata is a much more normal type car to learn in for transitions to other cars.
I think so, yes, for most rear-wheel drive cars. But I love when you talk to Andrew Pilot, and he recommended the Spider, and I kind of agree with Andrew on that. If I were to like do it all over again, I would probably get a Spider. Now, I don't know if you can find a 2003 Spider, which is the year to have for for $5,000. It's probably going to cost you more than that. But well, first of all, it's mid-engine, so it's very different. I've only driven an MR2 Spider once, and it was an STR car, so it was obviously set up a little differently. But it will really teach you about anticipating the car coming around and like throttle steering and just like pitch and catch, and it will teach you a lot about weight transfer. Like I really believe that Brian is as good as he is because early on he started in MR2s, so he kind of learned to listen to the car and not just kind of like go on autopilot, and they're trickier to drive for sure.
You're not kidding about that. When I drove a friend's, I don't think we were in D stock back in the day or whatever it was. When I got in that car, I was like, "What's wrong? I keep turning and it's like just sliding." He's like, "You're over inputting." And what I realized with those cars with no weight in the nose, very much like a GT3, you have to be so precise with your feel of what is going on with those front tires. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, but it's also mostly, the car I drove didn't have, nearly as much power as a GT3, and I'm sure it behaved very differently. But the one thing I noticed is how much you lift determines how much the rear is going to rotate and how hard you lift. So a little smooth lift, and it would rotate just a little bit. You lift really hard, just like I was used to lifting in my RX-8. It's an RX-8 on Hoosiers, it would do anything. And then I get into this Spider on street tires, and suddenly a lift, it was like the fastest spin I've ever had in my whole life. It came around before I even could sense anything going on. So it really would teach you car control. More so than a Miata, I think.
So this comes back to, Tom Reynolds said the same thing. You need a half lift and a full lift in the GT3. But that's the same thing for a lot of Civic drivers, and thus why I think some of us left foot brake, is because the lifting, especially right before you're going to do an input to turn or a sweeper, is very dangerous, or you get very good at catching the car. So you just saying that makes me think some people, if you have a Civic type car, you might be able to learn quite a bit of this of catching cars because they're going to do the same type thing. They will go around if they're set up even decently well.
Oh, absolutely. It will make you good at catching a car. I mean, our Z, both of them really have made me better at catching a car because I simply never had to do that before. Because, just driving Miatas and RX-8s, it's easy peasy, pretty well-balanced chassis, and it never really had any shortcomings that I had to drive around, that would turn in fine, and then ballast going into a corner, out of a corner, steady state, everywhere, really. And the Z, not so much. So, you kind of had to anticipate where it would start to slide. And it doesn't slide progressively. It kind of snaps, and then you have to anticipate it because otherwise you're losing a lot of time. Every slide is very, very costly.
So anticipating them, do you ever make the car slide at certain places to have it turn more? Or are you just saying, hey, when we come up to this, it may slide here, so counter steer to begin with, or throttle, do something with the throttle ahead of time?
Well, first of all, you have to be very... Well, if the car's if you pick up some random understeer mid-corner, you definitely can punch the throttle a little bit to get the back end to rotate. And I've done that. I do it more subconsciously than anything else, and then I'll watch some video later, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I did that.
Do you sometimes want it to rotate and do something to have it going, or more so are you anticipating that if I overdo this entry or an exit here, it's going to rotate and cost me time? Where is it going to cost you that time at?
Definitely anticipating that the car is going to do it if I try to be a little too aggressive with my inputs, which leads me to something that has taught me some invaluable lessons, which is to drive the Z on really, really bad, worn-out tires. I mean, this has taught me And I've actually done that exercise in my RX-8 as well. Just put some all seasons on it and just go driving. And the car will be loose on entry, it will be loose on exit, it will do all sorts of things, and you just kind of have to start anticipating it. And I mean, I would say this to anybody: just put your car on some really, really low grip tires and go driving. And what I've even done in my RX-8 was put, my good SDX tires in the front and put the all seasons in the back. And just drive and just know that the car is going to be loose everywhere. But it's very progressively so. So, by the end of the day, you really learn how to be smooth and how to anticipate it and how to make it seamless and how to make it work.
That would probably be really good for a test day. Like run for an
Yes.
hour, do something over and over and over, and be used to, okay, I've got to catch. Because I think my stubbornness of running really old tires in the rear of the Integra, I took that lesson. Unfortunately, at real events, I kept learning that lesson of, wow, I went around again, thinking something was wrong, and it was really just the rocks on the rear of the tire, like they were hard. So that's great advice that on purpose it's better to learn than going to events and having to learn that lesson.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of times we drive because we think, okay, no, the car should be able to do this. But really, you should listen to what the tires are giving you at the moment and not drive to what you think the car should be doing on good tires.
Do you really mean listen? So is listening a big part of your driving experience?
Not so much listening for, noises tires make, because tires make different noises, but more like having that seat of the pants feel, just developing that feeling of being one with the car, just anticipating what the car is going to do and feeling how much grip the tires are giving you, like driving to the level of grip you have available.
Gotcha. Okay, good. I want to clarify because some people don't listen. I think I like the Bridgestones partially because they talk more, and I think that's from Hoosier days of if you really overdid it, you would hear them talking versus other tires. So I love the fact that, yes, we have ears, but also between our hands and the seat where we're sitting, our butt, we can feel what you're talking about to learn that anticipation of what's happening and going on. And as Andy would say, you got to correct as soon as possible to keep it all seamless.
To keep it all seamless, yes. And then, once you get on really, really good tires, you're like, oh, this is easy, because you've already practiced on bad tires, on when you don't have grip, when the car is doing all sorts of, weird things and you're used to catching it and correcting. So then it really makes, going to a better setup, it makes it that much easier. And there's also, somebody could argue that you don't want to practice on the wrong tire because it will teach you to underdrive, and there's absolutely this element about it. And, I try to be very mindful that I'm naturally an underdriver, so that's all I need is to get used to not having grip, and then I get on a really fast tire, and I'm like underdriving the car everywhere. So I always have to be mindful of that. Yeah, it's gonna take me a few runs to adjust to be able to, drive the car with more confidence. And it's not going to work for everybody, honestly, because people adapt differently. I'm used to jumping in all sorts of cars, so it's not that big a deal for me anymore. But it did used to be, so there's always that.
Yeah, good point. But I still think that, like you said, as long as you have time to get back on the better tires and get used to that, hearing what the Whiteners said, they would buy the cheapest tires and get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of runs of practice. I would think if you have the ability to do that, to get the cheap tires or all seasons or anything and get the seat time, but then have some time back on the grippier ones, that's going to be a better bang for the buck and use of your time and money than not getting that time because you want to buy Hoosiers.
Absolutely. And just a little side note here, though, tires are not setup agnostic. So a car can behave one way on one tire and a different way on a different tire. And of course, in a perfect world, you have all the seat time in the world. You can try 2-3 different sets of tires on your car, do some testing, go to spring nationals. By nationals time, you have it all figured out. We don't have that kind of time or resources. So, especially in the 350Z that runs 18-inch tires that, cost $1,300 a set, we just don't have that kind of money to throw away at, testing different tires or, running on Bridgestones all the time. So what we do is we run Bridgestones at the big events, like national events, and then at locals, I kind of run whatever. I had last year I ran on Hankook RS3s, and this year I ran on some hand-me-down Dunlop the Z2 Star Specs, and one thing I found out about the Z2 Star Specs uh, was that they don't really like blending inputs. So the car doesn't slalom very well with them at all, and it doesn't put power down well. And I know that if I'm trying to set up my car, based on those tires, it's just not going to happen. And the car's showing me some bad habits that it didn't used to have before. So, you have to be very mindful of that. It wasn't really much of a transition going from the RS3s to the Bridgestones, but the Z2 Star Specs were a totally different animal. So, those were more for practicing smoothness than anything else, because the car was pretty evil in them. But I definitely, and as a general rule, especially if you have a stock car, which is more tolerant to different kinds of, tires where, the behavior wouldn't change that drastically, totally get a cheap set of tires and practice, because it's, you can learn in any car. And even this year, I didn't even drive our cars that much. I probably drove, I think I'm up to 17 different cars this year, not even including all the cars I've driven at school. So a lot of times they're just like, okay, people are like, what are you driving today? I'm like, whatever I get tossed the keys to, So I just co-drive with other people, with local people, and just, have fun. And you can learn in anything, on any tire.
Yeah, that's where people go back and forth and be like, no, you got to stick with one car forever. Whereas I think there is an advantage you all are getting that are driving lots of cars. But I love that what you said, do not go off and change your setup based on the crappier tires, because especially if it's not a stock car like you're saying, it can be so different. It was Andy that pointed out that you're really testing tires on to your setup versus testing how fast one tire is versus another. He said you really need to change your setup and then test both tires again. So that's a good point. If you put on crappy tires, you make adjustments to make it better, and then you add all that grip back, you probably harmed yourself more than gained the experience.
Well, that's true. I don't have much personal experience with the Rival S's, but people say that that they make quite a few changes to their. Actually, I've heard quite a few people say they make changes to their setup when switching back and forth between the Bridgestones, and I guess even with the original Rivals a few years ago, people found out that they don't work in Lincoln. They worked everywhere else. People loved them, but apparently they were, Lincoln wasn't very friendly to them, so yeah, it's site dependent, it's car dependent, and it's just a lot of trial and error. Or you can listen to guys like Andy and let them do the work, kind of make your own conclusions.
Exactly.
Pick up a copy of GRM and do some reading.
I'm a pretty good lemming, except that I don't actually change the setup. So I was one of those guys that just, I'll put them on there and run it. It doesn't feel as good. And once again, David Whitener's car on the Rival S's, I couldn't complain. It wasn't sloppy. It wasn't weird. So definitely tweaking the setup enough works, because several people won on those tires, even in Lincoln. STR happened to win. James John was very good on those tires. So it's definitely possible. Like you're saying, it seems like you need to tweak and test to figure out what's going to work there. So 17 different cars. Do you get picky about what you drive? Do you hope it's stock or ST? Does it even matter, or are you just out there for variety?
No, not at all. I just show up to an event just to have fun, and I ask like, well, who wants a co-driver? Or like a lot of times I'll drive with a novice just to help them out, and actually a couple weeks ago I co-drove a friend's FRS, just to help her out and, ride along with her, and had a great time. And that's kind of how we usually do it. I drove a local guy's Evo, STO Evo, and it was my first time driving anything all-wheel drive, and just had a blast. And it's a totally different animal than our Z, even though they're both STO cars. So I just really like that. It's a lot of fun, and being that it's not going to work for everybody. Some people, it's going to mess them up more than it's going to help them, jumping from car to car, because maybe they need more time to adapt. And as long as you can compartmentalize, the differences between cars, it's easy. Really, at some point, you just jump in a car and drive, and you don't even think about it. You just kind of listen to what the car is telling you, but you don't have to have so much of your attention be consumed by, how different and weird this car is, that you're not even paying attention to the course. So, I think it definitely could be a very good thing to maybe jump into 2-3 different cars a year at least, just to compare, just to keep your skills sharp and not to drive off of memory or off of what you think the car should be doing, but just to kind of, shock yourself a little bit and make yourself look ahead more, listen more, anticipate more versus just be on autopilot, which I think a lot of people get complacent. So, they kind of get complacent in their car, and that's kind of when you hit a plateau.
Exactly. If you think you've done the best you can do, you're not trying, you're not feeling anything different. That's where different cars. I happened to hop in the FSP Volkswagen, and I could not believe how much grip, even though it was rather cold out there after first runs. I was just blown away. It reminded me of the EP Civic when I hopped in that at the test and tune, or test course at Spring Nats. Just talk about gobs of grip. Like I haven't been on Hoosiers in a while. I was like, oh my goodness, go faster and get on the gas sooner. It was amazing. So that would be fun for some people that haven't been on different tires to definitely do that and start recognizing when they're at the limit and how much different that limit can be based on the car and tires they're on.
Oh yeah, one time when Darren DeSimo was running an EPCRX, I bolted in a passenger seat and I rode with him at a test and that car just blew me away. Of course, I'm not used to the Avons at all, or a car that weighs I don't even know how much it weighs.
Probably 1,500 pounds, or I would guess.
1,500 pounds at the most, yeah. It's like I'm the heaviest thing in this car. So yeah, and I would love to jump into more cars like that are so radically different, and it's something that Tom O'Gorman does all the time. He jumps from the 914 Porsche into into an Evo, into a Civic, and he drove. I think this past year he drove a Z06 somewhere. I think in one of the Wilmington events, and he's great at all of them. But the reason why he's great at all of them, well, besides his natural talent, of course, which us average people can't,
It's video game talent. I swear, I'm chalking it up to. They put the time in. They put the time in.
I think it can help. I think the sooner you start practicing something, the earlier on in life you start practicing something, the better you get at it, because kids are just better at learning. So whether it's video games, whether it's karting, whether it's maybe you're driving ATVs somewhere, in the dirt or something, I think it can help. It can help you with car control, and it can develop maybe your hand-eye coordination or whatever it is. But I think the key is starting early. I really wish I'd started earlier, because I don't think I have 1 ounce of natural talent. I think everything I've learned it through work, and I'm learning because I'm a very analytical person, so I really like to always look for what could be done better and things I like to work on, and I love watching video and things like that. So I think if I've ever improved, it's because I've put the time into it to learn. But I don't have any raw natural talent at all when it comes to this. I don't think so.
So what do you do video-wise? What are you analyzing? How much time are you spending? What are you looking for? What have you learned from it?
We just have a regular GoPro in the car, and just after an event, just spend maybe an hour watching videos, and mostly if the car does something really, something interesting, I like watching video and being able to explain, okay, so why did the car do that? Or maybe it was my input, or maybe I hit a bump somewhere on course that made the car, upset the car. But I like looking for reasons and explaining things, because, 5 years ago I could watch my in-car video, but I couldn't tell you why I did something or why the car did something. And so I think it's had great educational value. And I know a lot of people are fast and they can't tell you why. They're just intuitively fast. And I'm not like that. I need answers. And that's how I learn. That's how I learn. Just curiosity. And I've always loved studying driving. And I love, after an event, watching other people's videos, especially after nationals. I spend days and weeks watching other people's in-car videos, watching line, because obviously line choice at nationals is this big thing. What line did everybody take? And especially when conditions change, why is it that, people did that, and what kinds of cars run what? So it's just really my natural curiosity more than anything.
And do you mix data with that, or is it pretty much video does it for you?
I run Solo Storm, but I think I mostly rely on video. But I think together they can give you a lot of meaningful information. Solo Storm alone, you don't really see what happened, So just because it's showing you that a car was slower somewhere, like video will show you why. So, maybe you didn't just get on the throttle later. Maybe the car was understeering and you kind of had to wait and unwind first, before you can get on the throttle. But I think together they're very meaningful.
So you're definitely probably looking at hand inputs since the camera's inside the car, so you can see those. Yep.
Yes, I really think it's necessary. And we actually have this. It's a headrest bar mount, which is really nice because it's kind of centered, and it shows you your hand inputs and shows you the whole course ahead. I know sometimes people put their cameras outside on the side window, and that's fine too. I mean, whatever works for you, but I think seeing your hand inputs can tell you a lot. And I'm a huge believer in that smooth is fast, because I used to be so jerky, and especially on like early runs, I used to be so stabby with the throttle and so jerky with the wheel and just correcting all the time. And one thing I've been focusing on the past couple of seasons is just I want to look at my in-car video later and just have it be pretty. Like I want it to look pretty, and obviously it's not always, that's not always achievable. You're gonna have moments in the car, and sometimes sloppy can be faster. It happens. I definitely had runs that were less tidy but ended up being faster. But generally, I think there's a lot of value to be had in being able to see your hand inputs.
I like that. I want the video to look pretty, like seeing that everything is nice and smooth and tidy. Because you hear people saying that by watching certain drivers, like, wow, looks so smooth, looks so almost slow.
Have you met my co-driver?
Yes.
Did I say more? Like when you look at your video next to him and you're like, oh my gosh, I suck at this.
But have you guys uploaded some of those side by sides?
We haven't actually. I haven't done that. But like, okay, so first of all, I know Jeff and Nicole Wong do that a lot, but like for you to be able to do that, you kind of have to run similar times. Otherwise, if I'm lagging like 2 seconds behind, what's the point?
We've had people where they cut it and then they get you back together again for the next section or something, which yes can take a lot of time. But you say smooth, and when I think of Brian or I think a lot of the fast people, I think they actually have really fast hands. So I think they're smooth, and then violently quick to catch it, and then smooth, violently quick.
Violently quick to catch it before it happens, before it becomes a big event. Yes. Totally.
Yes. So in riding in an Evo SM with Chris Mayfield years ago, I was like, oh my goodness, that was so abrupt. I just was like blown away at how nothing was smooth, yet I've never driven one, which makes total sense why I thought that. He had to do so many things and so quickly that I wouldn't describe it as smooth. It probably was obviously effective. He's won championships in that car. But it just... So I guess I think a part of what they do is smooth, and then it's very quick and violent, the fixes. As Robert Thorne said, and I think Highcotter does this as well, Brian does, they anticipate and or they know that, hey, I'm going to get on the gas really hard here, so I'm going to open the wheel up first very quickly or something.
I think it's going to be very car dependent, because I've seen Brian be butter smooth in cars and not make any corrections and just be fast.
Yeah.
If the car's cooperating, that's great. Especially in a stock car, you can do it. I mean, you watch his video from his RX-8 days, or when he was driving Chris Canna's MX-5. It's easy easy soft-sprung cars on Hoosiers. There's really not much drama going on. But you get a nice to use. If people watch, Brian's got a video called, I think it's an autocross comedy of errors, where he's basically drifting the Z around the whole course, and it's absolutely hilarious to watch. But you're right about that. It is just all about anticipating and minimizing time loss everywhere. And I think they're not afraid to be at the limit, and they just see it coming early enough that they correct, and they're just not really afraid of the car. Coming loose and being loose. Yeah,
it won't bite them. I actually think the fastest people, they are over the limit, under limit, over, under. But that way they're averaging out much closer to the limit than people that either don't get there very often or when they get there they go way past it, which is a big mistake for 0.2 or half a second.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Slides are costly. And if I look at data and compare myself to Brian, most of the time I'll lose time just because I'm sliding more. I'm just sliding the car more, and I'm like, hey, I'm sideways. That's awesome, but it's not fast. It's really, especially time you could, if you spend, that's time you're spending off throttle where you could be accelerating. And there's a very fine line, and in the Z, it's a super super thin, fine line because it's such a knife edge setup between underdriving and being too slow to get on throttle and just overdoing it.
So are you being loose on throttle inputs? Is that the...
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas...
Yeah,
go ahead.
The Z can be loose on entry, but most of the time it's going to be loose on power.
Okay, and this will tie into your coaching and teaching. I think most new people, they lose the time on the entry because they didn't slow down, so they're pushing or plowing a bit. Whereas you're at the other end now, you're experienced. So for you to be getting better, it sounds like it's all on the exit of turns, probably with the speed and how much power you're adding in there. Is that kind of correct?
It is true. I think the problem most novices have is trying to go too fast in the slow parts and they're too slow in the fast parts. So there's a lot of newbies will underdrive, but also a lot of them will go too hot into a corner and think that the more they understeer, the faster they're going. But they're in a slow corner, there's only so much speed to be had there. You have this optimal speed. And if you go over it, you're losing time. You're not gaining time. And then we also get into how tight you want to stay in a corner. So definitely, I think it's probably 50-50. Some people would try to overdo it and overdrive, and some are actually too timid. And you have to tell them, okay, brake harder. Now get on the gas. So I think it's 50-50 when it comes to people that are new. Me, I try more to. There's a few things that I work on now, but I think one of them is because I used to have this habit of, stabbing the throttle like mid-corner, trying to get to throttle too early, and then I have to back out of the throttle and then get on the throttle again. And it actually ends up being costly. So now one of my goals is don't get on the throttle until you can commit to it. And it's easier to do in a lower horsepower car that's, cooperating on power, but it's really hard to do in a car that has more power.
And it's more costly basically because if it breaks loose, then it's just like as bad as the push on entry, or probably equally or more so.
And even if it doesn't get loose, I think if you get on power, then you have to back out. By the time you've gotten on the power again, the next guy will already have been on power and accelerating, and he's going to get you by, a couple of tenths by the end of the straightaway or whatever the next element is. So it's been one of the things I've been working on. And the other thing is corner entry. Now, I used to be a late breaker, a very late breaker, and like I'd get into the ABS. Well, if I had ABS, not in the Miata. So it made my driving very choppy, but it was all from not looking ahead. So now I just now I don't really have that problem anymore, thankfully. So now I just focus more on how fast can I enter a corner? Like Brian Peters was talking about, loading up that outside tire, the outside front. He was saying he likes to feel, that outside front tire being at the limit on entry. And that's what I try to visualize when I enter a corner. Brake early, but don't overbrake, but then don't overdo it either. Like, stay on your line, but at the optimal amount of grip the tire will give you.
Yeah, and that comes back to that feel of, can you feel what's there? Can you transition, do that enough practice to know, okay, it's loaded. And I love when I'm driving well and I'm playing with the throttle to set that line, to increase it or decrease it. Not the brakes, once again, like even with the left foot braking. If I can increase or decrease that line with the lift or adding some percentage of throttle, it seems like the key to being, I know I'm on the optimal line, or I can tweak it just a little bit there. Do you have the sensors that tell you how much throttle, like what percentage you're inputting and when?
No, I don't have that. The OBD2 guy. I actually had bought that, and it didn't really work in our car because my for some reason the runs wouldn't start recording, and I just got rid of it and don't really run it at all.
Yeah, that'd be so interesting for some people to be able to break down to really see. Because when you were saying that, I was wondering, are you putting in, let's say, 45% instead of slowly going 10, 20, 25, 30, 35? It's just fascinating. So now you'll probably go buy another one, being analytical. You'd be like, yeah, I should figure that out. Yeah, did you gun it too much and then let off? I mean, that's one thing TrackMate and SoloStorm can show, especially the brake, gas, brake. That's pretty apparent. But it sounds like you're at the level now. It'd really be good to see the percentage or to notice, or can you start noticing and being aware of how much are you getting into the throttle when you get in there, what you're saying, too early?
I try to just anticipate how much is too much. I try to be fairly aggressive on throttle, but not to the point where the car will slide. So you have to do it smoothly, but smooth but fast on the throttle, because you don't want to spend time, not accelerating as much as you could have been. But then on the other hand, you don't want to overdo it either. You don't want to shock the rear tires, which is kind of key in the Z, because, and in a lot of other cars really, you don't want to shock the rear tires, but at the same time, you don't want to be spending so much time, trying to get to full throttle where you could have been going full throttle. And some cars, I've driven other STUZs that are better at, just being able to take more throttle on power. Ours isn't, so it's a little tricky to drive. So we kind of have to drive around that. But it's at the same time, it's really taught me a lot about listening to the car.
And so all this setup and stuff, when did you, what first got you into loving cars? What are your first car memories?
I don't know. I always just attribute it to just being born with car DNA. I was born in Bulgaria, and we didn't really have a car. So, I remember one of my earliest car memories are just, I always wanted little model cars, like little die-cast toys. When my mom went somewhere on a work trip, like I would tell her, I just want a car, really. So I always played with cars. And, I remember watching F1 on TV with my grandfather, and just really always loved cars. And then when I was a teenager, I got hit by a car. And, I spent like all summer, being bedridden. And I did not even want to hear about cars. I could not ride in a car. I never wanted to drive a car. Like, I wanted nothing to do with cars anymore. And because I was just like so traumatized at the time. And then I moved to Florida, where my dad lived. And he kind of told me, you have to take a driving test and, and learn how to drive. And I'm like, can't you drive into school? He was like, oh, no. You'll have to, drive yourself. And I'm like, there's no way. I don't want to drive. And then my cousin gave me this hand-me-down car, like a $500 Chevy Celebrity, and, went and took my driving test, and I started driving, like, against my will, but I did. And then later on in school, I got a Nissan Maxima, which was a car that, it's like a family sedan, but it's like the first nice car that it had. And it was actually my dad's car. And, that kind of actually my mechanic my tech at the car dealership was into cars, and he had a Maxima. He supercharged it and took it to the drag strip and stuff. And it's kind of when I first started learning about cars. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, oh, there's things you can do to a car. Like, you can modify it. So I had like a strut tower brace for my car, and like a rear sway bar and little things like that. And then I got a G35, which is like every Nissan owner's dream. Like, it's either a 350Z or a G35 at that point. So I didn't have that long. Then I got my M3, and then I got into track days, and that's how it started.
The love took off.
Yeah.
That is sweet. Yeah. I was wondering, you could say I got hit by a car and I still love cars, but oh no. I was like, wow, that makes total sense. Like, I want nothing to do with those. They were very dangerous.
No, if you had told me, like, I would have never thought in a million years I would love cars, that I would compete in cars or even make a living with cars. Like, there's no way.
Be like, no. Yeah. So get into some of this living with cars. So you got out of college. And tell us a bit about that, and then fast forward to living, playing with cars.
Yeah, I got out of college, and I got my M3, and it was really my dream car, and I started modifying it. I got suspension and exhaust and all that stuff, and then I got into autocrossing. But yeah, I still have this car to this day, and more about what I do now.
Yeah, work-wise with cars.
Work-wise, yeah. So the past 3 seasons, actually in 2014, the SCCA rolled out a new program called Starting Line, and it's geared toward people that are new to autocrossing, new to motorsports, new to performance driving. So it's even on a more basic level than an Evo School. I think Evo School would be like the next step that you would do. And I also think it's a program that anybody can benefit from even just like test and tuning standpoint, or just like honing in your slalom skills. And Andy was talking about on his podcast about, drive a slalom for like 15 minutes, just like go back and forth, and then get a skid oval and just like drive that. And that's exactly what we do in the Starting Line School. We have a slalom, we have a skid oval. So basically 2 very basic modules, because, you break autocross down, it's a slalom, it's either a slalom or a corner or a turn. So we teach people how to slalom and try to get them to, backside each cone and, use constant throttle, accelerate out of a slalom, look ahead, kind of thing. And then in a skid oval, we teach them, how to look ahead and find their exit and always look for their exit, and accelerate and brake with intent. And we kind of, go over the whole traction circle and, putting the weight in the nose, and then, load, the outside tires, and, get on throttle, put the weight in the back, and that kind of thing. And then we do a full autocross course in the afternoon, which is timed, which is run like a regular event, so they get a whole bunch of runs that way. And it's really taken off. We've done 3 seasons so far. This was our 3rd season doing it, and I think it's great because when I was first starting autocrossing, there was no starting line, there was no track night in America. In my local region, my local SCCA region didn't even have a solo program. So I was like, so what is the point of joining the SCCA? Like, what is the point of me being a member? So I only joined because I was going to be doing national events. But like the SCCA is just, trying to reach out to other audiences and, get more younger people involved and, and kind of cater to that kind of car enthusiast that, maybe just want to learn. And you may never autocross in your life. It is just really cool. It's a really cool exercise in just learning your car and learning to drive at the limit and looking ahead, and skills that you can do and that you can use in your daily life. We've had a lot of, like really young, like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, in their first car, just like trying to, just trying to get better at driving, which I really applaud them for.
I think that's really, so good for their safety.
It is for their safety, exactly. And then that way they're not trying to do that stuff on the street. They're not trying to go crazy and turn off their traction control and do like a U-turn and hammer the throttle and spin out and do anything, So so they get to do that in a controlled environment with an instructor next to them, and it's really great. It's been an awesome program, and it's done well. It's become very popular, and I think it's a really good complement to to the Evo School program, or to even just in regions where they don't have like novice schools and things like that. Here, even at San Francisco region, we do a couple of starting line schools every year.
How much seat time are people getting in these schools, and does it vary depending on where they're at in the entries?
We usually give people there's about a 20-minute slalom session in the morning and a 20-minute oval session that we do, and then we do 12 runs in the afternoon on the full course.
So each person's getting 20 minutes on the oval and 20 minutes slalom?
Yeah, we usually do 2 cars at a time. So you share the oval with another car, and one car's in the oval, the other car's like debriefing, and so we share the time, so that way we can get more students in.
Well, I would think
but it's plenty of seat time.
Yeah, I would even think for people that aren't new to it, if you don't have any other way to get seat time, go out there and get that 20 minutes of slalom practice. I mean, that sounds to me like something to do.
Especially if you're trying to like dial in your car. I mean, obviously we've even had, it's geared toward, regular street vendor cars, but we've actually had people, I think it was somebody that bought a B-Mod car or something like that came to one of our schools, and it was like a totally new car to him, and he was just trying to get it dialed in, and just he had an autocross for a while or something like that. So there was not even a way for an instructor to get in the car with him, but he still found it very useful and helpful. So he kind of was using that time as to time that he could get used to the car without actually doing an actual event, because you get a lot more seat time than a regular event.
Yeah, if you get 20 minutes total, that's a lot more seat time than our events. But that's where I would think some people, I would even be enticed to come out. Plus, I think if you want to grow your local program, if you have some cars out there and can show people a real setup autocross car, let's say, and show them how fast you go, they might be enticed to say, oh, wow, I want to go check this out. It might even help bolster local programs that are trying to grow.
Totally, and we always have, at least here in SFR and other regions that I've been to. I mean, actually, I've been to Denver, and they blew me away with the way their program is set up and just the way the local events are run. I mean, you even have a great spot at the local event. Like, you have a separate table just for work assignments, and just it's run like, so it's so organized like a national event. Like, I was completely blown away, and other schools like Portland region is really, really awesome. So the local region is always very involved in putting on those schools. So we always talk about what local events are available to these guys and girls, and we actually give them a free entry to a local event with a school. Because usually the schools are the day before a local event. So you get an automatic free entry.
Yeah, come back and show up. That's huge.
Yeah.
You mentioned how we run our events, and I guess I started 14 or 15 years ago. And I don't know if it's just Bob Tennell or who was running back then, but they made sure that we ran things. Of course, the national office used to be here as well, so that might be part of it. So we had the national staff around. But ever since I've joined, that's one thing I didn't realize until I went to nationals, and people had no clue what was going on, or even how to report to your corner captain what was going on or what the cone calls were. And it's all because the local region has ingrained that. And yes, we have grid assignments. We have grid numbers. All of that is just like it. So I would encourage other regions, if you can pull it off, do it, because it's going to help anybody that tries to go to another event to just be able to fit in, especially when they get to a pro solo and there's a lot more going on and places you have to be times two, that will help people take the next step when they want to try the next level and actually succeed at it as well.
Absolutely, man. I came from Florida, where you took your car to tech, and the tech line alone was like an hour long. And then at the same time, you can't even walk courses. Some people never got to walk course, and it was so disorganized, And so you go to a place like Denver, where everything is so structured, and I'm like, wow. To me, it was a real shock going from, the ways that I was used to like a national event. I'm like, well, there's just so much to pay attention to, and so much you have to do. So yeah, you're right. I think it would be nice for those that are transitioning to national events to at least know what to expect, to be prepared.
And one thing you just mentioned made me realize one thing we do differently is you get your car into grid and it's teched there. So we've got these grid assignments laid out pretty early for the first heat, and you just pull your car into grid as soon as you can, pop your hood open, have your helmet sitting there, and tech walks through and does it. And generally second heat, they will start doing those as well as soon as those cars are there. So we have tech workers that work kind of right before the heats begin, teching cars. So there is never a 1 hour wait. It's get to this assigned grid spot and go from there. So that might be another key to how that's pulled off to, well, we try to make them faster and more efficient. But for us, our challenge is getting the course set up in time. Always. It's like 1 hour, be ready. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and it just depends on how many local volunteers you have to get it done. And it's here in California, that's what they do as well. It's tech on grid, so tech just goes around, checks your helmet, checks your car. But yeah,
How many workers do you guys have for starting line?
We usually have, depends on the event, like three to four instructors, depending on how many entries we've got. Our students are the course workers, and the reason why they're the course workers is because we want them to get used to, watching for the cars and watching for if a cone is, is down, or watching what's going on. And a lot of them will, especially in the afternoon course, they'll learn the course a little bit because they see what's going on and they'll see other cars go through it. And we usually have the local region help with stuff like providing food and water and, maybe keeping track of time, to switch every, 20 minutes or so, things like that. It's really, there's a lot of work that goes into the schools. We use the Garmin cameras, so they get shipped to the region and they need to be charged, and we put in SD cards and stuff like that.
And
so,
what opportunities are there for volunteers at these events? Can local people volunteer?
Absolutely, and we're very fortunate here in San Francisco region to have great people like Ed Runyon, who's always running around trying to help out a lot. And but I think any school that if there's a school on the schedule, and I think most regions would know, it would either be announced or it would be in the starting line website. You could always contact the region that's putting on the school and ask if you can show up, and I mean, we could always just help with those schools.
Yeah, the more people, the more instructors can't go wrong. Plus, people just have questions that you probably can't get to while you're coaching or instructing.
A lot of times the instructors get flown in, so they're not that familiar with the local program, even if it's just a representative, just to talk about what local events they're out there, because some of these guys and girls have never autocrossed, so they don't know, and they don't know anybody with the region, just to kind of be able to break the ice and like make that transition to, hey guys, you're really welcome to our local events, and you get a free entry anyway, so kind of introduce yourself and maybe what other sites you run on and that kind of thing.
Yeah, very cool. So in addition to that, you mentioned to me earlier about Track Night in America. Can you tell us about that program and what you do with that one?
Yes, so Track Night in America is another one of the newer SCCA programs that is geared toward car enthusiasts that are new to motorsports and that maybe they just want to experience what it's like driving the car on a track. Maybe you don't want to dedicate an entire weekend and resources and being away from your family to, going to a track day and paying for an instructor and paying for a hotel and that kind of thing. So it allows the regular guy and girl to take their car on a weekday to the track and, show up at 4:00, do their 3 sessions and then be wrapped up and, be home for dinner, and it's very casual, it's very low pressure, and it's very, very fun. It's a fun way to get out on track. So there's no instructor in the car with you, but we do have pace laps and parade laps, and we do debrief after each session, especially the novice group. We do have novice, intermediate, and advanced, so it is separated by experience level. But especially with the novices, we spent a lot of time talking about, about the track and any questions they have and any issues. And it's the Track Night in America events are run under the SCCA time trials rule set. So obviously anything, we use flaggers and corner workers, and so there's a lot of heavy emphasis on safety. So even though there's no in-car instructor, we still watch out for people's safety and, explain the flagging system to our participants and, make sure the events are run in a very safe manner and, and really, really big on respecting each other on track. So it is a really cool way to get out there and to experience what it's like driving your car on track without it costing a lot of money. And we do events, I think, at 20-something different tracks throughout the U.S. And it's been a really fun program to work with and develop over the past couple of seasons. I mostly stay on the West Coast now, at Thunderhill, and last year we had Willow Springs, Streets of Willow, and once in a while I get up to the Pacific Northwest at PIR, and this year we had Pacific Raceways.
So that's probably a great way for somebody to get to know their local track, along with, like you said, the flagging rules, just to learn the track, even if they do or don't do SCCA events in the future at the track. It sounds like you're saying a low-pressure way to learn your track, get some input from people, and just become familiar with it.
Sure, and we kind of try what we're aiming to do is just some cross pollination between different kind of with different audiences, different kinds of car enthusiasts. So with the starting line school, you get, at least this season, you're able to get a free entry to a Track Night in America event. So I've actually seen like a handful of my starting line students show up to Thunderhill, which is really, really awesome, and see what it's like to drive their car on track. And, and I always tell, our Track Night guys and girls, I'm like, why don't you come check out autocross now in the off season? Because we only run Track Night from April through September. Since we run it in the evenings, obviously it's the only time we have daylight. So, what you can do between September and April is, show up to autocross and, see what it's about. So, we just try to get people engaged. And also this past year we had a Track Night event on the same weekend in conjunction with the Pirelli World Challenge race at Lime Rock. So it was, I think, Tom O'Gorman and Brian were there, like doing track walks with the participants, which was really cool. So I guess we're just trying to get more people involved with the SCCA and make it fun for them and have more programs available for people. And it's not just for, it's not all about just SCCA racing or runoffs and stuff, because, there's much more out there. We don't want it to be overwhelming to people, but we want people to be welcome and join us and have fun without being overwhelmed, like having to think like, well, I need a race car, I need a racing license to come out and play with SCCA. So we're just trying to get more people introduced to motorsports.
That's nice, and I believe you said you did get a free entry from starting line to do the track event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
wow! Sign me up. I'm looking right now. What's around?
There's actually a lot of perks that come with a starting line schools. You get an SCCA membership with it, I believe. Yes, and I think a subscription to Grassroots and a Track Night entry, and it pays for itself basically.
I like it. I'll make sure to try to promote this in the notes as well, so people know, kind of like even a beginning way. Maybe one of the best ways, not only get some seat time and understanding, it'll make your first autocross, forget the track, much more successful, because you've already had a lot of seat time that would take, 20 events, 10 events to get that much seat time. And I think it's even more valuable all together at one time.
Yeah, I think so. I think, the more experience you can get doing different things, the more helpful it is. Whether it's track and autocross, whether it's video games, whatever it is that you do. But I think it all comes together at some point, and it helps you become a better driver, because the same principles apply.
Yeah, they cross over. That's where, hearing that you said you started on the track and then came to autocross, and I believe you even said this, I think it's so much more valuable for somebody new to start in autocross land before they do the track, because the bit of track I've done it seems so easy and slow motion after doing years of autocross that I would highly recommend, especially if you know somebody that's younger. I always think it's a good idea. If you know somebody younger that they seem like they're into cars, get them to autocross once again, because it's safer. So the starting line school would be great. I'm now forgetting the other program run through. Is it BMW?
Street Survival?
Yeah, Street Survival. That one doesn't sound like they get as much seat time or autocross type, but once again, another avenue to get younger kids who are going to be driving, even if you just want them to be safer. You don't care if they ever do motorsports. I highly, highly recommend getting the kids to some of these events. Even if there's friends of yours, like neighbor kids or something, offer it to them. Bring them out there if you can.
Absolutely, and there's another program called Ford Driving Skills for Life as well that is similar to the BMW Street Survival schools. It teaches, it's mostly geared toward new drivers, and it has like an impaired driving course where they put like the drunken goggles, and they have like a skid pad, and then they drive Mustangs with caster wheels where basically they just oversteer when you turn the wheel, and it kind of teaches you corrections and car control. And it's a really, really cool school.
Caster wheels and drunk goggles.
Yeah, they basically lift the rear of the car so that the rear tires are barely touching the surface. So it makes makes it really easy to like throw the car into a corner and oversteer.
Oh my good! I could see us coming up with events if it was legal at SCCA events to have challenges with that.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. It is so much fun.
You're like totally out of control. Like forget the 3-wheeler go-kart little races of pushing people around on the 3-wheel things. We're going big wheels is out. Now we're going to caster racing in Mustangs.
Oh gosh, yes.
Ay ay ay. So Pro Solo Eyes, we haven't talked about that. You've been running ladies class on Index, so you've got the big hill to climb with those all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive. I'm going to lead in by saying I've experienced that, and that is the heck of a challenge for some of those courses. But take us back to when you got into Pro Solo. How much did you autocross before that, and what do you think about it once you got there?
I did my first Pro Solo in 2009. I think it was the Toledo Pro Solo, and then my second pro was the Pro Finale in Lincoln, and the car I was driving, was in storage in Omaha, and flown into Omaha the night before, got in the car, show up to Lincoln, nobody knows the site, early Saturday morning, and it was this really, really thick fog, so thick that we could barely find the way to the site. And I remember the event was delayed. I can't really recall now exactly what the circumstances were, but I just know that we didn't have enough time to walk the course, and I was so lost. Again, it's courses that I've never seen in my life, and there's this fog barely lifting up, and since I had only done one pro, I was in the one eventer class, and it was 30 of us. And I remember Andy Hollis was in that class too, because I guess he had only run one pro at the time, and I just remember hearing Andy say, or somewhere maybe in impound, and he's like, brakes only slow you down, so this is the first, and I still tell Andy, this is the first thing I remember him for. At that time I'd been on the Miata forums and I always heard about Andy's top 10 autocross tips, and but the first thing I remember him saying to me in person was, brakes only slow you down. But yeah, it was kind of an intimidating event. I mean, I'd only been autocrossing at that point for not even 2 seasons, so that was my first finale and my first pro memories. Then I think for a couple of years it ran open, just kind of a class filler here and there. And 2012 was the first year that I committed to L3 when I built my second RX-8 for STX. And did pretty well. Got some second and third place trophies. Then 2013 I ran, gosh, that was the year I ran so many different cars. Some in street, some in street touring, some in open. So I was kind of all over the place. And that was the year when I drove one car at the finale and another car at nationals. And the car I drove at the finale was John Lugott's car. I'd never driven that car before, but I'd driven 2-3 other S2000s throughout the season. So that was my S2000 season. And 2014, what did I run in 2014? Gosh, I can't even remember. I think it was a lot of. I drove BRZ at El Toro, an STX BRZ at El Toro, and then I drove an RX-8 at the Wilmington Pro, which was Jeff Hurst's car, which was a championship winning car from the year before. And then at the finale, I didn't have an STX ride for L3, so Charlie Davis was like, well, you can hop in my BMW, and I had such a great time in that car. Actually, the tach stopped working on me on grid when I was driving that car, and I'm staged against a Civic or something, or a 2-stage limiter, so I don't know how much to rev the car because the tach's not working, and I can't even hear the engine because the car next to me is so loud, so it was hilarious. But had a great time in that car. Which leads me to 2015, which was the first year I ran the Z, the STU car, which was Brian Peters' car at the Pro. So I did a couple of pros, here the California pros, and we had a different index back then. It wasn't the STU wasn't running on a different Pro Solo index or something like that. So I was able to trophy. Gosh, I almost won the El Toro Pro, as I recall. And then leading up to this year, I was one out of the trophies at the finale. I was driving another Z since we couldn't bring our Z to nationals last year. I had to drive one car. I had to drive an L3 car at the finale and then drive a different car at nationals. So I was driving Mark Deschamps' STU-Z at the finale and then John Laughlin's M3 at nationals. And then this year,
How do you think that affected you? Did you think it was bad, good, bad, and different?
well, this is like the third year in a row that I driven a different car at the finale and then at nationals. And in all these events, it was my first time in a car ever, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of used to it by now. Like people, in an ideal world, you do all this testing and you get all this seat time and go to spring nest. Like we don't do any of that. We just show up, see what the car does. You know, how did it affect me? You can't let it affect you. You just get in and drive, and you just kind of get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Especially John Lockle's car. I mean, that was a car that I'd never driven before. I'd never driven anything in 400 horsepower before. So, and it just kind of adapt to the car as quickly as humanly possible because you only had. I mean, all the seat time I had in that car was 4 runs on the testing tune course. So, you just kind of learn on the fly.
Yeah, I did that for the first time ever this last year. It didn't work out well at the second event. The first one was fine. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I know some people would be thrown off by that, but I think it's really your attitude and what you're comfy with if it's going to really throw you off. Or I would think some people could win in 2 different cars, one from pro, one to solo in different classes. I think they could do it. Maybe it's not optimal, but it could probably happen. Were you totally addicted to the pro format? Did it throw you off at first?
Oh, I really love pros. I think there's just so much going on. You're going left, right. There's never really any downtime. You're either working, and then because I usually have co-drivers, so I usually either watching watching them run and helping do tire pressures, or I'm running or working course. So there's not really much downtime. There's always so much going on, and you have 2 different courses. So I've always loved pros. I think you get so much seat time. At tours, it's just to me, that's like slow motion. It's really just been tough, just this past year, running an STU car, running a rear-wheel drive car and an all-wheel drive index, which is STU-Z on the index that, that EVOs and STIs are running. So it's like I was telling you earlier, you pretty much give up 4 to 7 tenths per side, and that's not enough time you can make up on course.
Not on short courses for sure, and it's so course dependent. Oh, you keep mentioning El Toro. For everybody out there, don't all sign up this year, but I love that space. I love that lot. I love that event. I missed it, I think, the last 2 years. So I'm trying to make sure no vacations or anything are planned. That is the vacation. I mean, what do you think about El Toro when you get down there compared to where you guys race locally?
I've done a few local events, even at El Toro, that weren't pros, but I love the site. It's really great because it's easier on tires, but then it's fairly grippy. So it's a lot of fun. And also, between Cow Club and San Diego region, everybody's so competitive and so good. You go to one of their local events and it's like a national event. There's always 200 people, and I'm like, if I get top 50, 60 on packs, I'm like, I did well, because everybody's really good. And they're just a really great bunch of people. And I definitely recommend coming out to one of the California pros. They're never, so they're not like the East Coast where you have to be, right there on the computer at 8 a.m. trying to sign up because they're sold out in 2 seconds. There's, we're lax out here, so you can sign up late. Either El Toro or Crow's Landing is also another great site. It's super grippy, harder on tires, but it's concrete, so it's a really great site too. Though we're very fortunate to be able to run on.
Yeah, some of the videos I've seen, those courses have been very, very, very fast.
Yes, this year the tour was pretty fast. I think I was in 3rd gear 4 times per course. And actually, we helped set it up, and Howard, I think it was Howard Duncan that was there. He said he drove it a few times. He drove it in a Miata and then in a Corvette, and he said, if you don't like this course, you should find another hobby. And it was just grinning year to year. It was Charlie Davis's course. It was a really good course.
And that's where for some people, I think they only get the experience of higher speed courses that may be funner when you travel a bit. That's what people would complain. You're like, oh, the events aren't the courses aren't fast enough, because they'll go to a national style event where they have more space and it's just balls to the wall. You're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I could go to 3rd gear and spin trying to do it. That's what I remember about California and Utah. Is like you got to go really fast, and for a pro, you got to do it 12 times. Just blows my mind that more people don't do pros.
Yeah, I guess it was before my time, but the El Toro Pros apparently used to be a lot longer, like 45 plus seconds each course. Now they've kind of shortened them to be more in line with what all the other pros are.
Let's not do that. This next year, let's make them long again. Because those...
Howard.
Yeah, most of those I went to, they would go and go. Tom Berry designed at least one or two of those, I believe, years ago that I raced on. It's just so much fun to get out there and go, and you're going, it's like, wow, I'm getting 4 events basically, or 4 tours in. And you guys,
exactly.
I think, are only separating your pros by 2 or 3 weeks this year out there in California. And because I know how much you guys get to practice, at least in the LA and San Diego, they have a practice event before the Sunday events. I'm like, I might as well just go out there. I keep trying to coax the wife to think this is a family trip. We're in California. Just because you can get so much seat time. And like Teddy just said, you're competing against really good people. You can kind of see where you stack up. And with the practice day, you have enough runs to make some changes.
So do what Brian Peters does. Like, take the whole family and, like, I guess take 2 cars or whatever. Send your wife and the kids to Disneyland, and then you do your Saturday there. Do your, 12 runs on however many. You can have somebody ride along with you. You can ride along with people. You can get so much input from others. Have somebody drive your car even if you like. And then, then just... You can stay for the Sunday event. And what's really cool about their Sunday events, you can actually buy extra runs as well. Like X runs, I think they call them, or something like that.
Oh,
or like
nice.
time on runs. So, yeah, there's ways to do it. And I haven't made it out there to any other local events this year, but I really hope to be able to. Oh, no, I think I did just one, like in January.
What do you guys do there at your local area? Do you guys get practice days ever? Always?
We do our only practice days are when we kind of share the site with the starting line school, so I'm busy with the starting line side of things. But yeah, we do have, SFR region does a couple of test and tune days a year, and we're actually really shocked that there aren't more highly subscribed because it's at a great site. It's Crow's Landing, it's on concrete, it's a fast course, and we're like, wow, LA gets all these people and we really don't. So, but we do. But that's about it as far as practice days. But we do have between. There's a couple of clubs out here, American Autocross Series and SF San Francisco region, and we get a fair bit of events.
Nice.
Per season. Yeah, we even had the Slush Series just now, which that's kind of like,
what is that called?
Kind of makes. It's called Slush because where everybody else is like shoveling snow and like we're autocrossing, So it's kind of meant to, it's kind of our post-season series. Because our season ends in August, I think.
We all need a car in California and an Airbnb place to stay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very much so.
Yeah, of all things, the autocross time would be my number one reason why I would move to California. That'd be it.
It's great. I honestly have been very spoiled because, before California, I used to live in Florida, and it's the same thing. I mean, actually, in Florida, your off-season is like the 3 months before Nationals when nobody runs events because it's so hot and humid and rains all the time, so it's kind of miserable to try to run in that weather. So, like, right the 3 months before Nationals, that's when you go do national events, you don't really do any local stuff. But yeah, that's like, I'm not really used to having an off-season. It's kind of weird right now because we had the last Slush event. I'm like, there's not another event for like a couple months. Like, what do I do with myself?
Really? You guys don't have any scheduled in January?
I don't think so. Actually, I'm not going to be here in January. I'll be in Florida, so I get to do some events in Florida.
Y'all better have some. If not, we're going to make fun of you because we schedule them every month. So this last weekend we did race. It got up to 50-something degrees, and luckily it is at 50 degrees and sunny here and no breeze. It's great. Like, I was in just a light long-sleeve shirt. So hopefully you all, with the great weather, will have an event or two. It seems like LA doesn't take off anytime ever. I swear when I watch the Wong's Facebook feed, they're running 2 events pretty much every weekend in 3 different cars.
Oh, they blow me away. I don't know how they do it. They never take a weekend off from racing. Do they? They go to sometimes they'll be at El Toro or like Fontana one day, and like the next day they show up to Crow's Landing or to Marina, and I'm like, do you guys ever take a day off? I mean, I travel a lot, but I do a lot of events, but like, for example, I was at San Diego this year, but I was there with starting line, so yeah, I did the match tour, but if it wasn't for the school, I probably wouldn't have done it. But they autocross even more than I do.
Yeah, that's where I didn't realize you moved to California. I saw you out there, and at some point you're like, no, I live out here now. I'm like, oh. I was like, I just thought you traveled everywhere to race. I'm like, that's pretty cool. You're another person I want to be like. I want to make it across the whole country.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have been able to be between track night and know the schools and all the national events I've done. Like, I've been to most of the U.S. just traveling for racing.
Nice.
You know, it's funny because people see me at an event. Like, somebody sees me in D.C. and they're like, oh, you're from D.C., right? And you're driving whatever that car was driving in the event. I'm like, no, that was just like a one-time deal that I was driving that car, and like I don't really live there. Like, I just travel a lot for racing. Now people might have seen me in like New Mexico or Toledo or like, I don't know, Nebraska, Portland, all over the place.
Yeah, pack what I'll tell people. I love it. It's I don't know if it's 27 hours or what it is, or 18 or 19. It's a haul, but I've enjoyed it every time I've gotten up there. And that's one thing I think I may have a better chance of getting the wife to fly up there for that, just to be in that area compared to Disneyland, the madness she's not into. Let's hear what your favorite car has been so far. Our favorite cars. What really stands out to you?
For autocross, one of my favorite cars to drive was John Loughlin's M3 that I drove last year at Nationals. It was such a fun car. It like really made my heart race. I wasn't really used to the speed, and handles really well, and it hides its weight remarkably well. You know, for a car that weighs like 3,500 pounds or something. It was a really, really fun car, and kind of like my M3 on steroids.
So that was an F Street car?
That was an F Street car, and my other two favorite cars have been the 2Zs, or 2STUZs, because they're fun, they're very engaging to drive, and they've taught me so much. Like, I've learned more from these two cars the past couple of years than the whole entire time leading up to then. They're tricky, and it's very rewarding when you get it right, but it's not easy to get it right. You know, they're not easy, and I really appreciate it. I mean, it's nice to jump in a car that just works and you don't have to think about anything, you know, but they've been pretty awesome, and you know, in teaching me smoothness, in teaching me not to overdrive the front tires, because it's such a nose heavy car that you know, you have to be gentle with the front end. You know, you can't just like manhandle it. So they're not very, you know, if you have a jerkier kind of driving style, it's not going to go over well.
Do you shuffle steer?
No, I hardly do.
Okay.
It has to be a very you know, in a car, like the one time in my life when I drove an SD Civic, I was like, I don't know if the wheel is straight or if it's turned 180 degrees, because it's like the rack is so slow. Like, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea how to slalom a car like that because my hands are not moving fast enough. So I guess it's in some cars you have to, but I've never had a car that, you know, had such a slow rack that I actually have to shuffle steer.
Yeah, I just wonder.
Rare that I do.
Yeah, no, I would like to get out of the habit for those fast rack cars like the S2000. What you described about the Z makes me think that that's an S2000 like that. It can be tricky. Is that, you've driven both, so am I off basis there? Do you consider them different?
It is, yeah. It is kind of like a higher powered S2000. Really, it's. I like driving it like a speed maintenance car, even though it's quite torquey. But you really have to modulate the throttle in our particular car, like it's a Corvette.
Nice.
Because it's pretty stiff. It's got pretty stiff springs, and it's got a lot of tire on it. But the springs are so stiff that like you can really shock the back end very easily. And so you always have to be like mindful of that, and you don't want to manhandle the front end either. And it's very set up. It depends on the car and the way it's set up. Like Mark Deschamps' car that I drove, you have to be much gentler with the front end of that car in slaloms because it's very easy to overdrive it. So you kind of have to guide it more. Whereas our car, you can be a little more authoritative with it, I guess, with the steering. You can throw it around a little more. So this is just little particulars, just really little details that you have to figure out as you drive a car.
Yeah, and that Mustang's the one you won in last year, so you won a championship in it, so a little extra fond place in your heart. And what you're saying about the Z being challenging, and thus I said like an S2000, I kept hearing that starting in a Miata is the way to do that first, and then you step up to these trickier type cars that have a little bit more to figure out. So I think that your progression, telling people yes, you could get a Miata to start with, is once again spot on with what I've heard from other people.
Yeah. Andy Howe likes to say that, the best way to do it is get a Miata, then get an S2000, and get a Corvette. Then that way you get to experience, it's kind of like this natural progression from one to the other. And I always thought of myself as a speed maintenance driver. I'm like, no, I like my Miatas, I like my RX-8s. I don't really care for power, I don't really care for like stop and go kind of, cars and like, but now that I've actually experienced power, like, it's so hard to go back. It's really, it does it, like, you get to elements so much quicker. So you really have to speed up your brain and to be able to look and think ahead.
It's so funny you said Andy Howe, because that's who told me that when I was in Packwood at some point. Yeah. He's the one. Andy, you get all the credit for the Miata S2000 Corvette. You get it. You've helped adjust my mind there. So thank you for that. I'm going to keep spreading it for everybody. Hopefully it works out for other people.
I haven't progressed yet to the Corvette, but that's hopefully at some point in the future. Like, I've told Brian Peters we've got dibs on his SSR car when he wants to sell it.
Ah, nice. And it's out there. We're going to get it out there. Everybody knows that. I'll be second in line.
He said he wants to enjoy it a little longer, though, so that's fine. That's fine, because we just built this STO car that we haven't even driven much yet.
Exactly. So if you could drive anybody's car, what would it be?
Oh, I would love to drive. Well, I would love to drive a GT3, a GT4, and I would love to drive that SSR Corvette. Because the C5, Brian's SSR Corvette, because the C5 to me looks it's so graceful on course. It's got a lot of power, but it's very dancey, and it's just a beautiful car to watch. It seems like it does a lot of things really well.
Yeah,
I'd also drive a CSP Miata as well.
The which Miata?
A CSP Miata.
No kidding, a go-kart.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you saying about the C5? People keep talking so good about them. I'm gonna put it out there. Nobody beat me to it. I'm gonna see if John Ames will dare let me co-drive some. I think it'd be invaluable to get in with any of these guys that are good, that have one of these cars, to ride along, if nothing else, even if I don't ever drive it, just to experience it, to see what magic they're really pulling off in those cars. I drove one once, and I rode in one. I was blown away at what they could do. It was rather amazing, and this was years ago. Do you have a car build you'd like to build outside of just driving somebody's car? Is there some build that is in your mind?
Let me think about that. I would love to build my M3 for STU. I really would, but I wouldn't, because it's too nice of a car. But I would love to build an M3 for STU and see how it stacks up against the Z. In ST land, I really love ST cars because they're not crazily expensive. Well, anything can be expensive. It depends on how much you want to throw into. But compared to like a street prepared car that you have to tow to events, and there's a lot more that goes into it. An ST car is still street drivable. So that's kind of like where my thoughts are right now. Like, I really gravitate around either faster street cars or faster street touring cars. So yeah, I'd love to try to build a STU M3.
Nice.
A 46 M3.
Somebody should let you drive one, if nothing else, if you don't have yours built.
Yeah, my car is like halfway there. Just all I have to do is I have an aftermarket suspension on it, and it's got some power mods. So really the only thing would be to get a nice square setup, some 18x10s, and throw some tires on it and go driving.
Hey, maybe somebody will contact you and have the tires and wheels to try that out with you.
I would love to put the wheels that are like from the Z on that car, but unfortunately they won't fit. So
you're like that close. I just need that much more clearance.
I know. I drive so many other cars that it's just like I don't even get to drive my own much. So
everybody cry.
I know. I just changed the oil in it yesterday and took it for a drive for the first time since like before Nationals maybe.
Yeah, but how long? I saw Facebook. So how long did it take you to change the oil, because that car is so low it seemed to be a little challenging?
Well, just being able to like jack it up was kind of a challenge, because I tried. Well, normally we have a low profile jack, which is fine, which is great. I drive the front tire onto like two 2x4s, or jack it up, put some 2x4s under the one of the front tires. That gives me just enough room to put the big low profile jack there, under the front jacking point, which is kind of in the center behind the plastic tray, which normally is not a big deal. And then I put the front on jack stands, but our jack is broken, so we don't have another jack that would reach under, so that I can jack up the whole front with. And I can't drive it on ramps because I don't even come close to clearing. So I had to jack it up by the rear, and then put a jack stand in front of put a jack stand under the front jack point, like behind the front tire, and kind of get underneath. But then what I found out is I couldn't get the jack stand up because I couldn't pull the jack stand because the jack broke, and it wouldn't go up again. So I had to get that jack off, and thankfully I had a spare jack that actually worked, so I was able to get my car down on the ground. So the longest part was trying to get the car in the air.
But this is gonna make it up for everybody out there that feels for her. What do you do with your oil, your old oil? Where's it go?
Well, this is something that actually Brian discussed on Facebook a few days ago. Apparently, where we live, there's a I guess it's something that the county does, is we have oil pickup, so they pick it up from the street, from like curbside oil pickup program. When they pick up the garbage, they pick up the used oil as well, and they leave like milk jug looking like containers that you pour your old oil in. And so every time they take yours, they leave another jug. So that's how we do it. But before then, when I used to live in Florida, I would just take it to the parts store.
Yeah, I was blown away when I saw that post on Facebook that they pick up your oil, like recycling right there. A few other people said they do that other places, but most people have never heard of that.
Yeah, not me. I mean, when I lived in Florida, they wouldn't let me change the oil in front of my house. So what I would do is I would drive to the Walgreens parking lot across the street and change my oil there. And like everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. Like there's this girl like with her car like up in the air like on jack stands changing her oil.
Do you need help? Yeah, change my oil for me. What?
It was really funny. Like people would walk up to me with all sorts of questions. There's this guy that's like, "Hey, I'm trying to change my oil. Like, what kind of like oil? For the filter wrench do I need or something like that?" I'm like, I don't know. It depends on your car, But it's really funny. Sometimes I think I've gotten in trouble or whatever. People coming over to talk to me, but people are just like making conversation. I never got in trouble for doing that.
Yeah, seeing a woman working on a car is always impressive. Like, what are you doing? You know how to do that? I don't know how to do that. Oh.
I try.
Yeah.
Half the time I get it right, half the time I don't. But with RX-8, it took forever because I like to drain the oil coolers too. So like, I'll jack up one side, let it drain, then let the car down to like level, and then jack up the other side. So like, it was always like, it took 2 hours to change the oil.
Wow.
I know, but I'm kind of OCD like that. So like, I wanted to do it right.
I now want to hear about some of your favorite memories from autocross times, whether it's racing, social-wise. What kind of stands out to you memory-wise as some of the best times, from championships to anything else?
My favorite memories autocross-wise? Well, I should start with my first nationals. When I always get rained on in nationals for some reason. But my very first nationals, it rained. That was when Lake Superstock happened, and I was running the heat after. And I'm like, and all my friends from Florida at the time were working course or something. So I'm just like sitting on grid, like all by myself. And I'm looking at all my competitors changing to, to wet tires. And I'm like, we didn't have wet tires, like first nationals, like we didn't have anything. And remember at that point I'd seen a Miata somewhere around paddock, not a competitor car, but just a 99 Miata with Bridgestones. I think at the time there were R11s was like the current Bridgestone tire at the time. And I'm like, well, I remember this Miata, can you guys like possibly find him and like get his tires, like so I can actually, so I'm not like the only crazy car on Hoosiers in the rain. And it was like, so I mean I was like really overwhelmed at the time because it's like my first nationals, and like not only am I like a Mazda, in a 99 Miata, where like everybody else has a 0K Solstice or back then it was a MX-5 MSR. And I'm like, well, not only am I in like the slowest car here, but like I don't even have rain tires. I mean, having a slower car actually could be an advantage in the rain, but but they found a guy with a Miata and borrowed his tires, and I had this express tire change with like 5 cars to go. Like I have like one person in each corner bolting up a tire, and I'm like I felt like an F1 driver. And it was really, really cool because, it just really showed the camaraderie of the sport, and, how you can go to a national event and not know anybody, and, people are willing to help you, and, your friends that are out there with you, supporting you and being there for you. It's something that, look back on very fondly. It was somebody who didn't have to do that for me, but they did that. And it was really cool. I actually ended up cloning away a trophy in the rain, my first nationals. So I was pretty happy, after all, it worked out. Another cool memory, obviously winning last year in John Laughlin's car. Not only did I love the car, but it's just the fact that, Brian and I both got championships, which is something I've been trying to do since like 2010 probably. And not only did I get to do that, but, just being able to do it in like my favorite car, because I've always been an M3 girl, and it was like a really special moment. Another really favorite moment of mine was this year when we embarked on this crazy STU build last minute. We have like both cars on jack stands in the driveway in the garage, swapping subframes between the cars and swapping headers, and just it was absolutely crazy hectic week where we only went inside to like shower and sleep. We ate outside, we did everything outside in the in the garage, and it was pretty awesome. It was like an adventure. Like I don't want to do it again, but it was fun.
It was a challenge. You guys overcame the obstacle of time.
It was, yeah. It's definitely nice to have a little more time, like development time and time to actually get the car dialed in. But since we didn't, still made it work, and that kind of stuff makes for the best memories. Brian got to win STU, which was awesome. And what did I do? Well, I conned away my fastest run on the first day, and then got rained on the second day, so not the optimal. But, I'm very happy with how I drove. And, I was so fearful before Nationals because I'm like, I haven't driven a Z since July. I haven't even driven on Bridgestone since July. I have no idea what this car is going to do. Like, I have no idea if we did everything right. We're going like halfway across the continent, going to Nationals. I'm like, I was just terrified a little bit. And then I just told myself, like, okay, just going there and knowing that, don't go there to, like, compete. Just go there to do your best. Just know that you're kind of, starting out a little bit behind the curve. Just, like, do your best. And, Andy Hollis was talking about, how the month before Nationals, he doesn't like to teach. He doesn't like to drive other people's cars because he wants to be so in tune with his own car. Well, all that I did, like, the last month before Nationals was teach and drive other people's cars. So I'm like, I did everything backwards, this season, but, we showed up there, and, I know that it's, between the finale when, we still had weather and cones, and same in Nationals, weather and cones, but it's like the best I'd ever driven. And, on the West Course, I was like 1 seconds off of Brian. I'm like, this is really awesome because this is not something that happens every day. This is not something that like I've been able to do ever before at Nationals. Last year, when I won F Street, he got me by like almost 4 seconds on the West Course. So even though I won my class by a whole bunch, so it really goes to show you like how much better he is than even his own competition. So to me, like that was really the best reward. I'm like, okay, we hopped in a new Toas car, and like I overcame this mental thing about like not being prepared and like not having confidence. And it really goes to show you like don't think about having confidence or not having confidence. Just drive. Like, just drive. Don't, like, take the emotion out of the sport, and then you're going to have so much more fun. Because we're all our own worst enemies and get into our own heads. But, I think my biggest takeaway, which made this event so great and memorable for me, was just being able to overcome those mental barriers.
Yeah, because once you're experienced, I swear most of us, it's the mental aspect that holds us back or helps us excel.
Well, absolutely. You look at some of those classes like C Street, like STX. I mean, where they're 95%, the same car, and pretty much, everybody's got a great car. Like whether you have a twin or an ND or whatever, some events, some courses are going to be more, course dependent. Depending on which car is going to dominate. But there's some classes where everybody's good and everybody's got a good setup. Everybody's on fresh tires. So it's all about who can actually hold it together and who can hold it together 2 days in a row. And I think that's what really the good drivers really shine. They just kind of minimize their mistakes and don't let pressure get to them. And this is something that I've been working on. And we can all get better at it, but it's something that's I've found is more helpful than any single skill that you can learn, like how to slalom faster or how to enter a corner or whatever. We all know how to do that, but the most important thing is to do it when it counts.
Yeah,
and
to treat everything the same.
Yeah, and you probably know from video games and online racing and that kind of thing. Like you get to a race, you're like, oh my gosh, like you start sweating, like your hands start sweating, like you get all nervous, and I think it's really good. It's really good practice, to kind of, to learn to relax and not let competition get to you.
Do you get shaky hands after runs?
Oh, it used to happen more, especially when I used to run in Fort Myers. Where the courses were pretty fast, like third gear. Like I would come shaking back after a run. It happened after driving John Laughlin's M3 last year, but it doesn't really happen as much as I'd like anymore.
Exactly.
And
It's that little high we're all looking for.
I know. I really used to love those events where I'd get seconds faster with each run, and come back with shaky hands. I'm like, now I'm just I've become too boring.
You're like, well, sometimes I swear that inherently when I finish, I just know it's a good run. Not seeing the clock or anything else. I guess the run's gone well enough, long enough that the tension's building up of will it continue to the finish.
Yeah. Yep. I totally know what you mean. Like sometimes I just know I had a good run before I've even seen the clock.
Be like, and that seems to be the shaky hands. It's almost like the clock. The clock is not determining that. It's not. Yeah, I guess if you win nationals, you come through that last run. I guess I get excited sometimes, but it's more so you just kind of know it's built up, and your body knows that it was good. You did as good as you could do.
Yeah, I think to me the shaky hands is more of a novelty thing. So it's a really fast course, and it's my first or second run on that course, or if I'm driving a really fast car that I'm not used to, it's just that pure feeling of speed is what gives me shaky hands. Or especially if I go at a track somewhere, oh my gosh, I'm just not really used to that kind of speed.
How much do you like to walk a course?
It's changed a lot, and you can talk to anybody that knew me from when I first started out, and they're like, oh my gosh, Ted is the first person there to begin a course walk and the last person to get off the course. I would walk over and over and over and over. But here on the West Coast, you actually don't have that much time to walk courses. Especially since they run the events morning and afternoon, like two separate events. So you only get a lunch break. If you're running in the afternoon, you only get a lunch break of 30 minutes. So you can maybe get a couple course walks in. So I've been trying to walk less, but make my course walks a lot more meaningful. So the first course walk, I just want to figure out where the course goes. Second course walk, I tell myself where I should be looking. And then if I need a third one, I'll take a third course walk just paying attention to some key cones out there. But to me, take as many course walks as you need. And some courses are going to require more than others. I normally don't walk more than 3 times locally. National events, obviously, I walk more, but I just make them count. I don't really socialize much on course walks. I do like walking with novices because I get to practice what I preach later. just saying it out loud helps me kind of like drive some points home. But yeah, generally just 2 to 3 walks. Nationals a lot more. And I hear some guys say like, I'll do my 2 walks or whatever, 3 at nationals. I'm like, that's crazy talk for me, because there's so many little intricacies and details that I need to remember, and I like to pay attention to. And there's no way I could do that in a couple walks, not with 2 courses, and like I don't have that kind of mental capacity to like remember all that.
I'm not sure I have mental capacity when I do that. I'm just trying something different so that I can win, hopefully. So that's after doing it so many years, like, okay, what can I do? Oh, I should treat it like a normal event. Okay, walk twice. Yet that definitely made me nervous, which I think helps me look ahead at times. So it's just trying something different. It's like, okay, if you do the same thing over and over, don't expect different results. Now, maybe it's the wrong, like, no, don't walk twice, but walk 10 times. Maybe that is the answer or something to experiment with. But for me, it's just trying something different.
Well, you're right in that if you walk a course too much, like you rely too much on your like visual memories and you're not looking ahead as much, oftentimes I'll catch myself looking ahead on a first run, but then every subsequent run, I don't look ahead as much. And so what I try to do is make myself look ahead more. And I know it's really hard to do, but it doesn't really help me to walk the course less. Actually, I had events where like I walked the course once and that was a mess, and I know that doesn't work for me. Like I had one local event this year when somebody came to me and they were kind of distracting me on my only course walk, and I just drove horribly, and I just, I know that doesn't work for me, and it's going to be different for everyone, but for me, you're right. You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over. You want to do what works for you, but what I found works for me is to actually tell myself where I should be looking as I'm walking the course, and that way when I get in the car, I'm already doing it. Like I don't have to I don't have to remind myself to look ahead. I'll just automatically look when I'm at corner entry. I'm already looking at my exit because that's what I did on my course walk, and I'm picking up the cone that I picked up on my course walk and that kind of thing. So I find that more helpful than just like walking the course less. I think I walk the course enough times to where I have my key cones memorized.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I walk the course, I am turning my head and looking all across the course for those couple of key cones. That's probably when I don't walk a lot. I'm still doing that, and hopefully memorizing those 2 or 3 things or 4 or 5 corners. Hey, where are you going next? Look over there. And while I'm driving, in my brain, it's kind of like, where are you going next? I try to play that track over and over and over. Or sometimes it's, where are you looking? Where are you looking? Yep,
and it's something that I would say Brian Peters got me to do more than anybody else. It like gets into my head. Like you walk course with him, and it's always about like what's coming up next. Like don't be aggressive and then now be channel your aggression, toward like what's coming up next, and like so that way you're not overdriving the current element. Like don't go too hard. Like that way you overshoot your braking zones, and you're just it's not pretty. And the way he preaches it is actually like the one thing that's helped me the most. And just always be hungry for what's next, and you don't ever think of autocross in terms of what's going on now. Like right now it's too late if you're just thinking about what's going on right now. Now obviously it's possible to look too far ahead, and that way you're hitting cones where you are, and obviously you don't want to do that. So sometimes I don't look quite as far ahead because I don't think I need to, but I'm always kind of aware of what's coming up, and I like to imagine like the trajectory of the car and what angle I want to be at like at any given point, because angle on exit is extremely important. It's what helps you. If you have a good angle on exit, you can unwind and start feeding throttle sooner, and that's everything.
I like that you said that. Good angle on exit is very important. What I do to kind of think about that when I'm walking the course is when I'm coming past some cone that I'm going to be tight to, especially if someone's around me, I'll be like, all right, what angle is my door next to this? Ideally, I want it like this. And when I set up courses, I usually even turn those cones so that ideally I would be parallel, the side of my car would be parallel with the side of that cone. So if anybody ever runs a course that I set the cones down on, that is one thing I'm doing. I look down at the cone and think, okay, where would I be? Which angle is my entire car at here? And I love what you pointed out there, is if it's at the right angle, you're on the gas sooner, meaning you're not behind having to wait, I guess.
Yeah, and something I've become conscious of is that I don't turn enough in the early part of the corner, and it's something you probably experienced in the GT3 as well. If you have a car that tends to push an exit, you want to unwind the wheel and give it more front grip, because otherwise you're just going to not be able to get on throttle forever, and it can get frustrating. So you definitely want to, set up your arc in such a way that you're getting more turning done in the first part of the corner, and that way you have more steering available. It's something Brian Peters said, and always go back to that. Start unwinding to the point where it starts affecting your line. Unwind as soon as possible. And now it's one of my things whenever I go to one of our marina events, because they're pretty sweepery. They tend to be pretty sweepery. That's all I work on is unwinding. Because it's a traction circle. The more it's like that string theory with the string between the steering wheel and the gas pedal. So I always tell that to students, and I'm I practice what I preach.
Exactly. That you're thinking about that, tying that while you're driving. If you can do that at first, you have to think about it and then make it subconscious. I like what you said that Brian said about unwind the wheel or open the wheel in a turn as much as you can until it affects your line, meaning it takes you offline, being you're not turning enough. That really makes me clue into, you can get, they say, as much grip over inputting as slightly less input. But if you're actually able to start opening the wheel, you will find that, once again, sweet spot of the optimal wheel placement where your car's not struggling or scrubbing off any speed is what I'm really taking from you saying that. And it's really the habit of being in a sweeper and opening the wheel every time. That'd be magical to be able to do that every time and learn that just, I'm here, can I open a little bit?
And that's critical in the Z, because the more you open up the wheel, the more you can accelerate, because the car will slide if you're trying to give it any gas and you still have a bunch of steering down it. So it's something that I've been trying to practice, and it's not at the point where it's like second nature yet, but it's going to be one of my goals to keep working on. I don't always do it because I can't think about it, when I'm driving. All I can think about is, okay, do more turning in the first part of the corner. But I never think about unwinding as I'm unwinding. I don't really know what my hands are doing. I'm just looking ahead, and I'm not really looking at my hands at that point. So it's one of those things that I haven't found an easy way to fix that, but I just kind of have to tell myself what I want to do in the first part of the corner more than anything.
And if we're slowing down, if the slowest part of the corner is the first part, it makes total sense that that's where you can turn the most. That's some thought I always have about tight turns. You want to be tightest because you're going slowest. But if there's a slowest point, which is right when you're letting off the brake, somewhere in that area you should be at the maximum turning and then opening the wheel as you accelerate out is, I believe, exactly what you were saying, and it makes total physics sense. So I like it. That's a good way to think about that for us, is a lot of us, if you're going slow, you can get more turning done there, which for most turns would be very optimal, especially for these cars with less weight on the nose.
Yep.
I like it. If you have anything else, let me know. If you're good, I'm good.
I'm good. No, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, most people don't get to talk about autocross for over an hour, really.
Thanks for listening. For the show notes and contact information, please visit autocrosstalk.com. There you can also subscribe so that we can keep you up to date on new shows as they come out. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on iTunes for the upcoming shows. You can connect to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autocrosstalk. You can share your thoughts, your insights, your questions, your suggestions there. Also, share with your friends. Hopefully you found it entertaining and motivating, and hopefully other people will as well. It's been fun, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and check back next week for the next show.